How could she betray me like that? How could she destroy our family? These were the thoughts that plagued me the next morning as I tried to recover from a night of heavy drinking. My name is Jonathan Fremont, and until last night, I considered my wife Susan Fremont my devoted and faithful partner. But I discovered her love didn't belong to me alone, but to another man. She admitted having an affair for the past year and, strangely enough, expected me to accept it. Suppressing my anger, I thought about her words from the night before. She claimed to love him, but insisted her love for me remained. She planned to spend more nights with him, ignoring my objections. She even had the audacity to tell me he was a divorce lawyer, and she was just helping him because he had lost his wife. I immediately saw through her lies. It was just a feeble attempt to justify her actions. I couldn't help but grin, having witnessed numerous dramas on television. I knew about the huge conflict of interest her lover faced. Entering a romantic relationship with a client would undoubtedly lead to his license being revoked. The irony didn't escape me, though my fleeting smile disappeared quickly. Despite my best efforts, I never discovered this mysterious man's identity. Getting information from Susan seemed impossible without resorting to extreme measures. The thought of hurting my treacherous wife flashed through my mind, but my children held me back. After all, she was their mother, and I couldn't subject her to such cruelty. I carefully reconsidered all the information I had. It became obvious that if I didn't comply with Susan's demands, there would be consequences. She and her lover would freely use my hard-earned money. Disappointed, I made a decision. Fortunately, I had a close friend who went through a similar divorce. One evening at a bar, he shared how he managed to get out of his situation. He emptied his existing accounts and opened new ones, setting aside the minor issue of his partner's infidelity to seek legal help. Though he found a lawyer willing to handle his case pro bono, it proved an unfortunate choice. My friend came out victorious, and she suffered significant losses. In our state with no-fault divorce, she received half their property but was denied alimony. The key difference was that they didn't have children, unlike me. This meant I would at least need to provide financial support for my children. From what I understood, instead of bringing him to our house, she went to him. Wanting to confirm something, I called my mother-in-law. "Hello, Jonathan, what happened? Did you want to talk to the kids?" my mother-in-law asked. She was such a kind woman that I couldn't help but wonder if she knew about her daughter's deplorable behavior. Probably not. "Oh, it's nothing special. I was just curious, how often do you usually watch the kids during the week?" I asked. "About 3 or 4 times a week," she replied. "Susan usually works from 8 to 5, but she also volunteers at a homeless shelter and food bank." When I told my mom about it, she replied, "Wow, Susan is cheating on her own parents." I thanked my mom and added that I wanted to surprise Susan next week. I asked her to keep it a secret, which she agreed to with a mock cheerful tone. I felt relieved that my mother believed me. She laughed and assured me, "Your secret is safe with me, darling." I thanked my mom again, said goodbye, and wished her a great day. After finishing the conversation, I looked at myself in the mirror. My hairline had started to thin, but not as much as I feared. I still had more hair than Christopher Maloney. Feeling the need for a change, I decided to shave and style my hair. When I examined the result, I realized I had more hair than Detective Stabler from Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. Now I realized it was time to say goodbye to my beer belly. Despite her hurtful words the night before, she was right. I couldn't ignore how I'd let myself go, partly because of the countless hours of overtime. I worked 60 hours a week to provide for my wonderful children and wife. Although I cherished my children very much, my feelings for my wife had changed over time. I realized I wasn't as susceptible to her manipulations as she imagined. Pulling myself together, I prioritized my actions. First, I contacted the credit card companies to cancel all our shared credit cards and request new ones in my name only. Then I contacted my branch manager and instructed him to transfer all funds from our shared savings and checking accounts to a new account exclusively in my name. I also canceled all automatic account payments. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened between my wife and me can rightfully be called an act of self-defense. Despite my wife's dismissive and disrespectful attitude, She resorted to shamelessly fabricating a defenseless version in her divorce dispute. She initiated the conflict, which was a serious miscalculation on her part. Her scheming lawyer, who turned out to be her close partner, told her what to say. Lawyers, like police officers, often use forceful pressure and intimidation to discourage ordinary people from defending their interests. Law enforcement officers use such tactics when they anticipate legitimate complaints about their actions. Similarly, these lawyers resort to similar methods to achieve an out-of-court settlement. Very depressing, isn't it? They both greatly underestimated me. Just because I was a diesel mechanic didn't mean I wasn't smart enough. I had 4 years of experience in the Army Criminal Investigation Department, which could have led me to a career as a police officer or private investigator. But my true passion was working with engines, especially diesel engines. Even as a self-taught mechanic, now that I was a certified diesel engine mechanic, I earned a decent salary with great overtime opportunities at time and a half. Dressed in comfortable sweatpants, I went for a run, not only to clear my head, but also to lose a few pounds and get rid of my beer belly. After running with a clearer head, I decided to call my boss and tell him I needed to take a couple of weeks off to deal with a family crisis. Surprisingly, he gave his consent without any problems. Now I had to think carefully about my next step. Cruelty was inevitable, and blood would have to be shed. I was aware of this from the beginning, but I desperately wanted to avoid jail when everything was settled. After my experience in criminal investigation, I knew there were methods I could use to make this plan work, though it wouldn't be without difficulties. It was time for strategic shopping. I quickly refreshed myself in the shower, changed into clean clothes, and went to the city. Considering the approaching winter, I bought a pair of comfortable elastic gloves, a black turtleneck, and a ski mask without a mouth hole. I also purchased a pair of Oakley glasses with a stylish matte gray front and matte black frame. Walmart really had everything. After learning the true identity of the culprit, I realized an exciting adventure awaited me. Next on the agenda was a visit to our local I Spy store, where I purchased voice-activated recorders and a GPS system with long-lasting batteries. After considering the need for cameras, I decided they wouldn't be needed at this stage. I also bought a gym bag to store my new gear and a pair of matte black work boots with steel toes. This purchase wasn't too tedious, considering my old work boots were already worn out. The new boots would serve as replacements for their worn-out predecessors. At the sporting goods store, I chose an aluminum baseball bat and a roomy sports bag. Feeling the desire to protect my physique, I also chose a sports belt to hide my stomach. I took precautions so the guy couldn't identify me. By intuition, it was a certainty. I tried to use cash for all transactions, avoiding any paper trail that could be traced to my credit card. Then came the hardest part, pretending to be a submissive husband when my lying wife returned home, whenever that happened. Of course, I didn't give up right away. Susan knows me well enough to understand how stubborn I can be. I stayed outside all day until my usual time to leave work. I didn't want this treacherous woman to suspect anything. When I entered the house, I found she hadn't returned either. Well, that's fine. I tried to call her on her cell phone, but it was turned off and immediately went to voicemail. I left her an urgent message, specifying the time and date, and insisted she call me back as soon as possible. It was time to play mind games with her. She called 2 hours later, and the children were still at their grandparents'. "What happened?" she asked, her tone filled with concern. Wanting to give my voice a little suffering, I decided to speak contritely. "Please, Susan, come home. It's because of the kids. Just come straight home." I managed to sob a little before ending the conversation. Less than 10 minutes later, Susan hurriedly entered from the garage, noticing the pain on my face. "What's wrong, dear? Where are the children? What is it?" she asked, her eyes filled with fear. Taken aback by her sincere concern, I replied, "Why do you even care? You were too involved with your lover to think about the safety of our children." There was venom in my words, and my eyes burned with hatred. Even though our marriage was crumbling, I was determined to create havoc in her mind before everything collapsed. "Susan, your phone stayed off for 2 whole hours after I got home from work, and I was desperately trying to reach you. What if something had happened to our children? What then? Is he really more important to you than our flesh and blood? Exhausted, Susan collapsed onto the sofa in the living room, burying her face in her trembling hands. Her sobs were heartbreaking. What if tragedy had befallen me instead of our children? Would you feel the same grief, Susan? Would you have felt anything at all? Or would you just call your parents and ask them to keep the kids longer so you could spend more time with your lover? She lifted her tear-stained face and met my gaze, still defiant despite her red and swollen eyes. It's not like that, Jonathan. You know it's not like that, she sobbed. I can't believe you've sunk so low. I can't believe you used our own children as a weapon against me. I shook my head slowly, incredulously. Susan, I never intended to do this. I just wanted you to know about the possible consequences. Imagine you're 2 hours late for something important and have to justify yourself to everyone for the delay. Would you choose to be unhappy or tell the truth? You said we should keep this a secret from our families, but how can we do that if your mobile phone is turned off? What if your parents had an emergency and the kids were desperate to get in touch with you? What would we do then? Susan, it's hard for me to understand that you put me in this situation, she exclaimed, her face flushed with uncontrollable anger. A slight feeling of guilt flickered through her expression. It was this sense of guilt that fueled her anger. Susan, I want you to know I am not the cause of this situation. You brought it on yourself when you got involved with your new lover. My wife is sorely missed, and the children miss their mother. I spoke softly, keeping my tone calm. Although they adore their grandparents, their love for you surpasses everything else. Hearing this, she turned slightly pale. Deep down, she knew I was telling the truth, but stubborn pride wouldn't let her admit it, as always when I was right about something. I'll take a shower and come back, she mocked me, but her words only strengthened my resolve. If she ever tries to divorce me, I will ensure she remains devastated and broken. When she returned to our bedroom to shower in the luxurious master bathroom, I took advantage of the opportunity. Quickly grabbing a GPS navigator and one of the voice recorders, I headed to her car. I hid the recorder under her seat and the GPS under the passenger seat, making sure I had the receivers for both devices with me. This would allow me to track her location and listen to her conversations, whether she was talking to herself or on the phone. The signal range of these devices reached an impressive 10 miles, so I was unlikely to lose sight of her unless she went to the far end of the city. But I knew her secret lover didn't live on the opposite side of our city. The day of reckoning for their deception was rapidly approaching. After the devices were successfully installed and the receivers checked, I discreetly put the voice receiver in my pocket and hid the GPS receiver in my favorite Ford F-250 diesel truck. I treasured this old truck, finding solace in its reliability. I was sitting inside with my head in my hands when Susan came out of the room looking amazing. I looked up at her, desperately pleading. Susan, I'm begging you, please change your mind. Don't put me and our family through this. Her face softened, and she replied, I'm sorry you can't understand, dear. I really love you, but he needs me. She smiled at me with remorse. No, Susan. If you were truly sorry, you wouldn't have left. You would have remained a faithful wife and not betrayed our marriage with another man. I spoke sincerely, leaving no room for misinterpretation. I need you to understand, my love. This is what I have to do for him, she pleaded again. I emphasized the importance of family. Your family needs you, Susan. I reminded her of our children. 3 beautiful souls who were born because of our love. Do you remember them? They embody the best parts of both of us. Susan, we created them together. My dear, I cherish you and our children very much, but he needs me now. I assure you I will be fully present for you tomorrow. She tried to soften the situation with a smile, as if that could magically fix everything. The moment had come to accept the role for which I was mentally preparing, but I couldn't hide my displeasure. I shook my head in resignation and let out a startled sigh. Her triumphant expression was quickly replaced by a condescending smile. Don't worry, my dear. I love you, and I will always be yours. It's temporary, she assured me. Okay, but it's going to take me a long time to come to terms with what you did, Susan, I replied, shaking my head once more. As she walked to the garage, she was right. This act was a temporary charade until I dealt with her lover. Then she would see the true extent of her hatred for him. As soon as she left, I took out an aluminum baseball bat, my trusty Bowie knife, and a blowtorch. An evil grin appeared on my face as I climbed into my Ford, activating the GPS and voice receivers. The radio played in the background, and I could hear her humming a joyful tune. I discreetly hid the flashlight and knife while getting my bat out of my gym bag. She got a 5-minute head start. I determined from the GPS that she was a few miles away, so I started my car and drove there. When I got to the house, I saw she had just parked her car in the garage. Damn, she even has a remote control for opening garage doors. She could have been his wife, not mine. Feeling anger rising in me again, I took a few deep breaths to contain it. All I wanted to do was break into the house and beat the crap out of them, and her too if she was in the way. I quickly wrote down the license plate of his car, a habit inherited from my days in the Army's Criminal Investigation Department. I noted the address, realizing this required careful planning. I made sure all my gear was in order, a habit ingrained in me. Climbing into the back seat of the car, I quickly changed into what I called ninja clothes. I put on a belt to hide my stomach, gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, and a sweater to hide everything. I put on black jeans and covered my face with a ski mask. Today's mission was purely reconnaissance. Tomorrow, everything would be different. I parked the car at the entrance to the alley behind the houses, a few houses away from her lover. Slipping out unnoticed, I quietly entered through the gate into the alley. No problem so far. I remained vigilant, constantly checking for alarms. Fortunately, I hadn't come across any yet. Crouching to the ground, I went to the nearest window, holding my breath. There was a faint light burning inside and darkness outside, giving me a significant advantage. I stopped right under the window and peered cautiously over the sill. What I saw ignited my rage. The man sat indulging in pleasure while my wife performed a seductive striptease for him. At that moment, I felt relieved that I had left the bat behind. My first impulse would have been to break the window and vent my rage on them. Taking a series of deep breaths, I tried to calm down. I strained my ears, hoping to find at least some clues about this man's identity. "Baby, I love it when you dance for me," he said. "Do you like it, dear, when I undress like a provocative seductress just for you?" It was extremely important for me to stay calm now, despite the temptation to get my bat out of the truck. I resisted. "I like it. You are absolutely charming, Susan," he exclaimed, feeling no remorse or struggle. I knew my wife was deceiving me with every word she said. "You too, Jim," she whispered. "Jim, right? Well, Jim, I believe you'll get over it very soon." I had reached my limit. I decided to leave before I made some stupid decision. I didn't want Susan to be present when I confronted this disgusting person. Although I had no intention of physically harming her, her partner, on the contrary, was fair game. He deliberately pursued my wife, knowing full well about her marital status. He manipulated Susan's firm determination. He was a threat, and I was determined to ensure he would never do this again with someone else's spouse. As soon as I got in the car, I already knew what to do. Taking off my sweater, black jeans, ski mask, and Oakley glasses, I discovered an unexpectedly comfortable sports belt that miraculously hid my beer belly. Quickly changing into my usual outfit of blue jeans, a t-shirt, and boots, I started my truck and hurriedly left the place. I finally found out Jim's name, which meant I could easily find his last name the next day. When I entered the house, I mentally noted that I needed to get my reliable lockpicks from the bedside table, an item I had kept since my days working in the Criminal Investigation Department, knowing they might come in handy at some point. I dialed my mom's number and asked if she wanted the kids to stay with her overnight. She gladly agreed, as she missed her beloved grandchildren. I assured her that I would bring them to her in the morning to look after them. Then I contacted Susan's parents to inform them of my plan to pick up the children in the morning. Although they adored their grandchildren, they seemed happy that I would take them to my mom's. Hastily packing a suitcase with necessary clothes and underwear, I shoved it into the closet. It was obvious we were approaching the final act. The time had come. Over the next 72 hours, she would have to face the scale of what she had lost. Deciding to start the day over, I retired early and got up with the sun. After a rejuvenating morning jog and a hearty breakfast, I sat down at my ancient laptop and began searching for Jim's location. His name was James Robert Stevens, a divorce lawyer who tragically lost his wife in an accident a few years ago. Surprised this information was confirmed, I realized they hadn't lied about his past. But what they didn't mention was his dastardly act of using a personal tragedy to manipulate and steal someone else's wife, my wife. The impudence of this scoundrel was amazing. Upon learning of his loss, I felt a sense of satisfaction, realizing what poetic justice was in store for him. He would experience a different kind of pain, not from his previous loss, but the consequences that come when a man betrays another man by stealing his wife. Continuing my business, I parked the car at my usual place at work. After completing my run, I went to the bank to pick up my new ATM card and credit cards. After withdrawing $300 from an ATM, I headed to the nearest Hertz rental point to rent an inconspicuous sedan. After transferring my gym bag from the truck to the car, I parked a short distance from my lover's house. Using my mobile phone, I dialed Susan's number, and to my surprise, she answered after the first ring. "Jonathan, what's going on? Shouldn't you be at work?" "What is it?" she asked. "Just taking a little break," I lied. "I'm actually wondering how long you plan to keep the kids at your grandparents' house." "Until Monday," she replied. "Why are you asking?" "Well, do you mind if my mom looks after them for a while?" I asked calmly. After all, these are her grandchildren too, and she misses them. I tried to keep a reasonable tone, successfully hiding my growing resentment. Susan's deadpan response took me by surprise and raised some concerns. "Okay, I don't have a problem with that," she replied casually. Her quick agreement was unexpected and made me a little worried, but I still decided to act with optimism. "That sounds good," I replied. "I'll ask Mom to come pick them up soon." I lied again. "Will there be a chance to get some affection from you tonight when I finish work?" I asked hopefully. She was silent for a long time, and I realized she had turned off the microphone on her phone. "I suppose so. It seems fair, considering I promised to give you my full attention tonight." Her words sounded flat, indicating a lack of enthusiasm. However, soon she would have no choice. Then her mood and tone improved a little. "Does this mean you finally understand my point of view?" I had to suppress my disgust before replying with another convincing lie. "Let's just say I'm leaning towards it, but I'm counting on equal time with you if that's not too much of a request." "Oh dear, I'm so glad you're thinking straight now," she exclaimed. She had no idea how clear my thoughts were. "Let's not rush things, my love," I replied, continuing to play the role of an unwitting participant. "We still need to talk tonight when you get back, but I'd like you to be on your own for the whole weekend. I have something special planned for us." "That sounds great," she said, her tone noticeably lighter when she believed I was agreeing to her deception. "Well, if you manage to break away from him early, I'd appreciate it if you prepare for me when I get back from work. I'm going to leave a little earlier today to be with you. I've missed you, darling." I sounded convincing even to myself, and it made me uneasy. But the last few days of training, proper nutrition, and abstinence from alcohol had significantly increased my endurance. "I think she will definitely be pleased with me today. My beer belly has noticeably shrunk in just a few days. Dear, I always wash myself thoroughly after being with him. I would never disrespect you to the point of exposing you to scraps." She laughed, and I realized she had lied about that too. "Well, I'm going to please you today, baby. I want you to be delicious and fresh for me." I laughed too. "Don't worry, honey. I will." She ended the conversation, and I returned the cell phone to my pocket. I quickly changed clothes in the back seat of the sedan, turning back into an undercover ninja, but so far without a ski mask and sunglasses. I got into the car and waited patiently. I parked in the opposite direction from her usual route home, but I couldn't be too careful. Susan is not naive, at least in this regard, but she was stupid if she thought I would just accept her manipulations. I started the engine and steered the car into the driveway of an abandoned house a few doors down from Jim the Fool's place. Adjusting the mirrors so I could clearly see his driveway and garage, I sank into the seat, ready to wait as long as it took. Suddenly, Susan surprised me by leaving just a few hours later. In a text message, she informed me of her departure, promising to return home refreshed and looking forward to my arrival. A grim smile played on my lips as I backed out of the driveway and followed her unnoticed at a safe distance. Deciding to make sure she wasn't cheating on me, I noticed how just 10 minutes later she drove into our own driveway without hesitation. I drove past our house and returned to Jim's house. I parked in the alley behind the houses again and slipped noiselessly through the back gate, just like the previous night, but this time I was armed with a bat and fully prepared to use it. Putting on a ski mask and goggles, I decided the time to act had come. Looking through his bedroom window, I saw the slumbering figure of the man who stole my beloved. A grim smile appeared on my face as I tried to open the back door. The door was unlocked, so I didn't have to pick the lock. What a smug man, but it didn't bother me. As for my favorite movies, I just love the Dark Knight trilogy with Christian Bale, Michael Caine, and an incredible cast. One aspect that caught my attention was how Bale changed his voice when portraying Batman. Inspired by this, I prepared myself to pose as a ninja. When I entered his bedroom, I noticed he was still fast asleep. He didn't even know he had spent the whole night in an intimate setting with my wife. Well, it was time to put an end to it. I dropped my gym bag, took out my bat, and loudly cleared my throat. His eyes flew open. At first, he was stunned, but as soon as he saw the bat in my hands, he panicked. With a quick blow, I shattered his kneecap, severely limiting his ability to move. He let out a high-pitched scream, which only spurred my resolve. With another blow, I made him completely motionless. A sinister grin appeared under the mask as I lowered my voice to a menacing growl. Tell me, what does it feel like? Jonathan is my friend, and he warned me not to take any action against you once I found out your identity. But unfortunately for you, I have my own idea of justice. Please spare my life, he pleaded in excruciating pain. I will fulfill any of your demands. I have wealth and can offer monetary compensation, he sobbed through his agony. I'm not interested in your money, I growled back. I want you to never even think about Susan Fremont again. If you dare to disregard my warning, you will regret it. Consider this incident a simple warning. If you decide to involve the authorities and Jonathan faces the consequences, I will come back and take your life. You have already caused significant damage to his marriage. Watching him the night before, it was possible to notice that he did not have the same qualities as me. Although he had an amazing physique, soon I would reach the same level of physical fitness, and he would not be able to compete with me. With another swing of the bat, I ruthlessly struck at him. Then I found his cell phone and smashed it with the bat. I also destroyed both of his landlines, so he couldn't contact Susan or anyone else. After leaving through the back gate, I got into the sedan and drove to a distant fast food supermarket. There I changed my clothes and then got rid of the bat. Then I filled up the gas tank in the trunk of the car. After leaving the city, I set fire to the remaining contents of the sports bag. Finally, I wiped the fingerprints off the incendiary device and threw it into the flames, regretfully sacrificing the Oakley sunglasses since they were quite expensive. I didn't mind because they were definitely worth the money. After that, I sought the help of a divorce lawyer and asked her to draw up legal documents against Susan. My goal was to get full custody of the children and 75% of our property without requiring alimony or maintenance from her. I made it clear to my lawyer that if Susan cooperates, then I will not disclose the true reason for our divorce to her parents. In addition, I informed my lawyer that I would soon have evidence of her infidelity recorded. After returning the rented car and expressing gratitude to the person in charge, I hurried back to the diesel store and entered the premises. I informed my boss that I could continue working until the end of the shift, but had to leave early to meet with Susan. He agreed, realizing that I would need a few days off in the near future. After finishing my business at the store, I decided to buy a prepaid mobile phone on the way home. After activating it, I dialed 911 and, in a deep voice, reported the details of the incident with Mr. James Robert Stevens, including his address. I threw the phone out of the window into the canal next to the road. I heard him not to maim or kill him, but so that he would experience the pain that I experienced for the rest of his life. He slept with my wife, and I decided to ruin his life in return. I thought it was a fair exchange. I took the recorder out of my pocket and turned it on. But I want to clarify that the upcoming conversation with my wife should not be taken literally as my approval of her infidelity, both now and in the future. I immediately turned off the recorder and returned it to my pocket. Arriving at the garage, I took the GPS and voice recorders from Susan's car. Before entering the house, I threw them in my truck. Inside, I activated my pocket recorder again and approached Susan from behind, wrapping my arms around her waist. "It smells amazing, baby," I murmured and kissed her neck. She was cooking steaks on the stove and had already made mashed potatoes and green beans. "Thanks, honey. I'm glad you're taking the situation better," she said, her voice full of tenderness. She then bent down to kiss my lips. "But I have something to discuss, dear," I asked with a touch of playfulness. "Would you really consider divorcing me if I didn't comply?" I kept my tone light as if I had already forgotten about her previous threats. "I wouldn't want to, but I would do it without hesitation if you refused me a lover," she replied with remorse. "I'm very sorry, my love. I wish things had turned out differently. Please believe me when I say I didn't mean to use threats against you. You know I love you, don't you?" I asked, genuinely worried. "But would you really take my children and deprive me of the opportunity to see them? Wouldn't that be very ugly?" I kept my tone light again as if I was now ready to comply with her request. She sighed. "Yes, I would definitely do that. He influenced me to make the divorce process as painful as possible for you. I'm sorry, my love. I didn't want it to turn out that way." "That's nonsense." "Well, on the other hand, at least I have you for the weekend, and the kids will be with Mom until Monday. I plan to take a day off on Monday in the hope that you will find the strength to spend this day with me." "Okay, but what about Tuesday night? I have a meeting scheduled with him again, and I will be by his side until Wednesday morning. After that, I will return home to take care of our children." It's impressive what a devoted mother I am, isn't it? I nodded in agreement. "Darling, I want to ask you one more time. Is there nothing I can do to convince you to end your relationship with him?" I asked, clearly sounding defeated. She sighed again, maintaining a soft and condescending tone in her reply. "I'm really sorry, dear. I have to finish the job, but don't worry, I'll still make time for you and the kids whenever I can." Oh my God, this conversation only strengthened my arguments in favor of her unsuitability as a mother. And yet, today she was mine. My lawyer assured me that the necessary documents would be prepared by Monday, and I planned to hand them over either here or at the hospital if she found out about her lover before that moment. All that remained was to call on Monday morning. The dinner was exceptional, and I will miss her cooking. After dinner, I took a shower and hugged her gently. That night, we made passionate love, fervently and intensely, which had not been in our relationship for too long. I gave her great pleasure. Though I wasn't skilled in bed, I was now determined to prove how amazing I could be. I took Viagra, ready to continue, but that wasn't all. I left my mark on her. It was a way to possess her once more, and she enjoyed every moment. But when we were done, she went to the bathroom, and seeing the marks I had left, let out a startled scream. She stormed back into the bedroom where I was lying with a serene smile on my face. "How can I look into his eyes now? He doesn't want me to be marked," she screamed, her face expressing disbelief and anger that I calmly shrugged my shoulders and replied, "Well, you're my wife, and I want to mark you as mine. If he doesn't like it, that's not my problem." She stopped talking when she heard my answer. She never directly told me about it, and she definitely liked it when I marked her. When she sat down on the bed and took my hand, a tenderness appeared on her face. "Jonathan, it was the most incredible experience we've ever had," she whispered, her words filled with genuine admiration. Now it became clear to me that she wasn't just trying to stroke my ego. In the last 4 hours, she had reached the peak of climax more times than ever before, which showed how much I had changed in meeting her needs. Gone are the days when she pretended for me. Admittedly, I wasn't always great in bed, but now I was determined to make it as pleasant as possible for her, and it seems my efforts paid off. But deep down, I prayed that my new achievements would be enough for her to stop seeing him. I loved her deeply and wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. All I asked was that she considered my point of view. She had been dating another man for over a year, and all I wanted was to get my wife back. I was able to hide my emotions, But during our intimate moments, anger and resentment were replaced by tenderness and love. Still, I'd put up with her nonsense for too long, and it was time to get recognition for my acting skills. I earned an Emmy, a Golden Globe, and an Oscar for pretending everything was fine. Dear, I am still your devoted wife, and my love for you knows no bounds. A few more months, and this difficult stage will be behind us. Then I will belong only to you again, she said sincerely, and a genuine smile appeared on her face. Her behavior was no longer patronizing, as she was prepared for the fact that I could divorce her. But now she was going to be caught off guard. The next day, she turned into the Susan I fell in love with. She diligently cooked, cleaned the house, and even initiated intimacy that night. I shared with her that I took the day off on Saturday and decided to extend it until Monday so we could spend more time together. We genuinely enjoyed each other's company, but now that I saw her true face, I didn't want to be fooled by her facade anymore. That evening, I made the marks on her body that I had on Friday, and surprisingly, she didn't mind. I couldn't help but think about this discovery, but it wasn't until Monday that everything changed for the worse. I begged her one last time, desperately urging her not to go back to him. Instead of listening, she defiantly snatched her mobile phone and retreated into the living room. I informed her that I would take the children, to which she agreed. I picked up my son and 2 daughters from my mother's house, and she thanked me for letting them spend time with her. On the way home, we stopped at Burger King, where I treated them to lunch. They really liked it, despite the fact it wasn't McDonald's. As we were about to leave, I got a call on my cell phone, and Susan's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, baby. Do you miss me already?" I grinned when I answered. I said I had taken the kids to Burger King for lunch and that we were on our way home. But Susan's tone suddenly changed. "Jonathan, what's going on? Stop it," she screamed. "It seems I forgot to mention that she would be handed the divorce papers while I was picking up the kids." "Oh, you must have received the papers," I replied. "I'm sorry, baby. We can talk about this when we get home." Realizing that I needed to discuss an important issue, I abruptly ended the conversation and turned off the phone. As soon as we arrived at the garage, I took the children inside. Despite the divorce papers, they clung to Susan and me, seeking comfort and reassurance. The children eagerly approached their mother, wondering about her recent whereabouts. She resorted to her usual excuse that she was very busy with volunteer work, but then admitted that we spent the weekend exclusively together. Feeling the need for privacy, I told the children to retire to their rooms as their mother and I needed to talk. As soon as they were out of sight, I took Susan to the basement so that our conversation would remain inaudible to the children. "Now we can talk without the kids overhearing," I whispered. "I have repeatedly begged you to stop this affair, and now I have concrete evidence of your own confession. The recording of this confession will be given to my lawyer, who will present it as evidence in court. It follows from the divorce papers that I am seeking full custody of the children, and your neglect of our family will be exposed during the trial. Moreover, you admitted that your lover is more important in your life than your children. Your actions with this man may well make you unsuitable for the role of mother in the eyes of the court. If this person also represents you as a lawyer, on the advice of my lawyer, I am sure that he is in danger of losing his license. Entering into a romantic relationship with a client, especially in the context of a divorce case, is a gross violation of ethical standards for lawyers." Her shock was obvious as she tried to formulate her thoughts. But I thought you'd come to terms with it," she exclaimed, her disbelief apparent. "Susan, it's become clear to me that I've never really understood you. In the same way, I now realize that you never really understood me. Over the years, I have done everything in my power to ensure your happiness. I gave you this house and bought you a car. I bought a significant amount of jewelry for you, exceeding our financial capabilities. To compensate for this, I worked beyond the norm. My intention was to improve your life and the lives of our children. But now I realize that my efforts were not enough to express the affection and love that I should have shown you. Susan, I sincerely loved you, but unfortunately, your betrayal extinguished this love in me. I want to make it clear that I have never accepted or approved of your actions. This morning, I gave you one last opportunity to completely end your relationship with him. I begged you to do it. If you had done that, I wouldn't have handed you the legal papers this morning. But you called him before you went to pick up the kids. I apologize for deceiving you, dear. But naturally, I had been planning this from the very beginning. During the divorce process, I gave her ample opportunities to visit the children, either under my supervision or my mother's or grandfather's. It would be difficult from now on, but I had to tell my mother and grandfather the news about the upcoming divorce first. I dialed my mother's number and informed her of my decision to move out after filing for divorce from Susan. I told her in detail about the situation, not forgetting to mention that I recorded Susan's confession of infidelity and how she preferred her lover over her marriage and children. In a heart-to-heart conversation, I asked my mother to kindly sit with the children while I was at work. When everyone was gathered, including Susan, I explained to the children that their mother and I would no longer live together, but assured them that we would always be there for them. Their faces lit up with joy when I informed them that we would move in with Grandma, who had several rooms available after Dad's death. We agreed that we would stay with her and quickly packed our things. Before I left, I assured Susan that she would always be welcome at her mother's house unless her boyfriend accompanied her. She looked completely shattered. 2 days later, she received the news that Jimmy Boy, her former lover, had been admitted to the hospital. I was at work when she called me. "Hi Susan, what happened?" I asked. Suddenly, she screamed curses in my ear, accusing me of almost causing Jimmy Boy's death. Stunned, I replied, "Wait, what are you talking about?" I gave such an outstanding performance that it earned a lot of praise. I demonstrated impeccable skill in dealing with confusion, putting everyone in awe. Suddenly, a piercing scream broke the silence. "Do you know what this is about?" "Stop it," she screamed. "He will never be the same now. He is all crippled," she screamed shrilly, tears streaming down her face as she desperately tried to pull herself together. In disbelief, I intervened. "Wait, who is Jim?" Susan's words seemed meaningless, devoid of any coherence. "You didn't try to kill him, did you?" "What is it?" she asked with obvious disbelief. Confused, I replied. "Kill who?" There was disappointment in my voice as I tried to clarify the situation. "Jim Barnes is the only Jim I know. Jim Barnes is a close friend of mine, both at work and in personal life." I shared all the details of the situation with him, and he couldn't help but grin mischievously when I told him about the incident with the lawyer lover and my actions towards him. Having overheard my conversation, Jim could hardly contain his laughter. As I mentioned earlier, Jim is the very man whose wife cheated on him, leading to an unpleasant divorce. Surprised, she exclaimed, realizing that I was not going to confess, and it seemed impossible for her to prove my involvement. "Susan, is there a man named Jim in your life who holds a special place?" I calmly asked, expressing doubt that this person could be Jim since he is not prone to situations close to death. "The only thing that can potentially harm Jim is a heart attack." I grinned at Jim, who could no longer hold back his laughter and quickly headed for the office. As it turned out, he claimed that he had been attacked, but was not sure of the identity of the attacker. Susan tearfully confessed that his genitals were badly damaged. Shocked, I reacted by exclaiming, "Oh my God! To be honest, if he was the person who took you away from me, I can't sincerely say that I regret his misfortune." "Susan, I swear to the whole truth. I can't help but feel intrigued by the unfolding events, even though I wasn't directly involved in what was happening. But I couldn't deny that I tend to appreciate the person responsible for this, perhaps even enough to treat him to a well-deserved beer." I wondered if anyone could have foreseen that he would continue to seduce someone else's wife after all. It was impossible for her to be around him all the time. The seeds of doubt were definitely planted in her mind, and I couldn't help but smile at the realization. "You never believed he would do that, did you?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment, caught off guard by my intervention. "Why do you say that?" she finally replied. "You mentioned yourself that he was saddened by the loss of his wife. He cunningly used this vulnerability to win you over, Susan." Her denial ended abruptly, and she sank into thought. She spent a lot of time thinking about the whole course of their romance. "My God, you're absolutely right," she exclaimed, disbelief in her voice. "This despicable man. Suddenly, Susan's voice turned into a heavenly chorus, confirming my point. She rarely acknowledged that I was right, and yet she finally did it. "Susan, remember this day," I announced, encouraging her to mark it on the calendar. "The day you admitted without hesitation that I was right about something." I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Of course, she didn't appreciate my reaction. Despite her displeasure, she did not resist when it came to divorce. During the trial, my mother showed that she could offer babysitting services for my children while I was at work. The judge took everything into account, including Susan's behavior during the last year while she was having an affair with Jim Stevens. Although she entrusted the children to responsible caregivers, this was done solely to keep the secret of her illicit affair. The judge did not unequivocally call her unfit, but granted me primary custody. Susan received secondary custody on the condition that she would not introduce the children to her lovers. I wasn't particularly happy about this situation, but I found some satisfaction in it. Before Susan got involved with Jim, who was very unpleasant, she was a great mother. Now she has a chance to become a great mother again. The judge informed me that I would have to pay alimony only for the time the children spent with Susan. In addition, Susan was ordered to find a job, considering that she studied accounting in college. It shouldn't be difficult for her to find employment. We sold the house and split the proceeds equally, but the joint accounts that I initially took control of were divided in a ratio of 75 to 25 in my favor. When Susan tried to express her displeasure, the judge reminded her that she had almost lost custody of the children because of her own selfishness and told her to find a job. Interestingly, the same judge took my claim for alienation of affection against James Robert Stevens seriously based on Susan's confession and testimony. Surprisingly, the court ruled in my favor, and I was awarded a settlement agreement for $500,000. I was pleased with the result. As soon as the gavel struck, officially marking our divorce and the allocation of a significant amount of money to me thanks to my ex-wife's action, I decided to buy my lawyer a drink at Silver Spar. Despite striving for a healthy lifestyle, which meant giving up alcohol, I allowed myself a couple of beers that evening. I managed to restore my abs by getting rid of the beer belly that had tormented me before. Throughout this whole ordeal, I knew that I had to be there for my children, and I was ready to re-enter the dating scene. I always hoped and prayed that I would meet a woman who had more depth and dedication than Susan. Angela Johnson, a stunning woman with gorgeous dark chocolate skin, seemed to fit these requirements. It had been almost 7 months since my last intimate encounter with Susan, just before I handed her the divorce papers. During this time, Angie and I developed a close bond that went beyond the lawyer-client relationship. We became friends. As friends, we decided to have a few beers at a local bar. While we were sipping beer, Angie asked about my plans for the future. "Jonathan, are you going to focus on work and parenting?" I shrugged casually and replied, "Yes, that's the plan." I managed to find a smaller house, a one-story with 4 bedrooms. It's much more affordable compared to that monstrous house Susan forced me to buy 3 years ago. A smile appeared on my face as I continued. "A couple of weeks ago, I moved into this house and closed the deal. It's closer to my place of work, and the kids just love it." Angie's eyes lit up with curiosity. "What about you? You took up my case knowing that I could lose a lot, but you decided to represent me anyway. Thank you for that." I exchanged bottles with her. "It's been about 4 years since my divorce since my ex was caught cheating," she said. I noticed the surprise on my face. "Why do you think I took on your case at such a discount?" "What is it?" she asked. "I don't tolerate cheaters," she replied with a grin. "Good, because neither do I," I added, giving her my best smile. Now that we had agreed, she surprised me with a question. "Do you mind if I fire you as a client?" Her question caught me off guard. "Why?" I asked. She shrugged, her smile widening. Smiling back, I said, "Well, then consider me fired." Then I asked, "Would you like to go to dinner?" She shook her head and replied, "No, I want you to come to my house so I can cook something for you." It's been 6 months since then, and we've been dating ever since. I've never been so happy. Angie, a high-ranking divorce lawyer, is not as demanding as Susan. She loves me, she loves my children, and they adore her too. She takes care of them as if they were her own, and although Susan is still their mother, they also call Angie Mommy. We find it really heartfelt. Angie has recently become a part of our family. On weekends, when Susan picks up the kids, Angie and I spend intimate moments together. So far, it's been a wonderful experience. As for the man who mistreated us, he has never been able to recover from the consequences of his actions. As a result, he was left without money and communication after his wife's insurance funds were used to cover his medical expenses, legal costs, and the lawsuit I filed for alienation of affection. To be honest, we don't feel any sympathy for him. Susan feels much better as the doctor has determined that her hormonal background is severely impaired. She takes supplements that have helped stabilize her overall well-being, but she never managed to find a decent job at an accounting firm and now works at a fast food restaurant. I was promoted to the head of the diesel shop and now earn the same amount of money for 40 hours of work as I used to get for 60. These changes allow me to spend enough time with my children and the new woman in my life. As for Susan, she will have to accept the consequences of her actions, and that's fine with me. Now she blames herself for everything, and I see no point in trying to comfort her. She refuses to date anyone else, claiming she still loves me. It's all nonsense, but I won't waste my energy on her. She will carry these regrets with her for the rest of her life, and some part of me secretly wishes they would consume her. I still hold a grudge against her, but fortunately, Angie is there to distract me from the pain my ex caused. Now life is truly wonderful. Our children are noticeably moving away from Susan, and I think she notices this. When they grow up and ask why I divorced their mother, I will tell them the whole truth and will not regret it. Story 2. Jen Wilson has been happily married to Pete for 12 years. Pete was her rock, her everything. But after the birth of their daughter Stephanie 3 years ago, their intimate life became predictable and mundane. Despite this, Jen loved Pete wholeheartedly. Recently, the leadership at Jen's workplace changed. Her former boss was replaced by Brad Jennings, a handsome and charismatic young man. Talking to Brad, Jen couldn't help but feel a growing attraction to him. She didn't see him as a substitute for Pete, but rather as a potential sexual partner. Jen kept glancing at Brad, fantasizing about what they could do together, but she never put these thoughts into practice, considering them nothing more than obscene daydreams. But lately, these fantasies began to occupy all her daytime hours. Her nerves were giving out, and she was constantly dreaming about Brad. Pete noticed her distant behavior and repeatedly noted that her thoughts seemed to be far away. It turned out that her thoughts were absorbed in vivid, intimate fantasies involving Brad. These fantasies seemed to ignite a newfound assertiveness in her communication with Pete, and she began to demand activities from him that they had not practiced for years during intimate moments. But even when Pete brought her to the peak of pleasure, her thoughts remained focused on Brad. She would be content if she just indulged in her fantasies, ignoring reality. But her fantasies became reality when unexpected events unfolded. Brad, her colleague, asked her to stay late to work on an important contract offer for a key client. Throughout the evening's work, Brad demonstrated impeccable manners and behaved like a true gentleman. When they finished reviewing the final version of their proposal, Brad's face lit up with a smile, followed by an approving nod. Yes, it's great. Thank you very much, Jen. He expressed his gratitude and recognition of a job well done. Brad offered to invite her to dinner. Jen thought for a moment, struggling with her desires and common sense. Succumbing to carnal impulses, she finally gave in. Okay, let me tell Pete not to worry, she decided and reached for the phone to make a call. She called home, and when Pete picked up the phone, she excitedly exclaimed, "Pete, my love, Brad is absolutely delighted with how well I worked today. As a token of appreciation, he wants to treat me to dinner at the company's expense. Isn't that fantastic? So I might be a little late. Do you mind?" Pete smiled, genuinely happy for her. In the last few times, she had shared her concerns about Brad not recognizing and praising her work since he became her boss. Pete replied, "This is amazing, darling. You finally got the recognition you deserve. Enjoy your dinner. I have an early meeting tomorrow, so I'll probably be asleep when you get home." he said before they confessed their love to each other. After finishing the conversation, Brad invited Jen to one of the elite restaurants in the city. Throughout the romantic candlelit dinner, he demonstrated charm, humor, and attentiveness towards Jen. Brad shared details of his life, including graduating from Stanford, a recent divorce, and cherished weekly meetings with his daughter. Although he admitted that he still had lingering feelings for his ex, he hoped to move on and build a new relationship. In turn, Jen talked about her family, her love for her husband and daughter. At times, she would reach out to touch Brad's hand, talking about proud moments of family trips or events. Brad kindly paid for dinner, and they stood at the entrance waiting for the valet to bring his car. Putting his arm around Jen's shoulders, he kissed her on the cheek and expressed gratitude for the wonderful date. Contrary to common sense, Jen reciprocated by gently hugging Brad around the waist and lightly kissing him on the lips. "I had a great time tonight, Brad. Here's a kiss to thank you for being an amazing boss." Their faces were close, just inches apart. Brad stared at her, his eyes full of desire. Gently touching her chin with his index finger, he forced her to meet his gaze. When their lips met, they hugged tightly, lost in the moment. When Brad's car pulled up, they reluctantly separated, but he hugged her tightly, putting her in the car. Without saying a word, he drove them to his apartment. At that moment, their passion overcame all rational thoughts. They quickly found themselves in Brad's spacious bed and spent several hours exploring each other's bodies. Brad showed her pleasure she had never experienced with Pete before. Exhausted, they finally laid down together. When it was well past 1 o'clock in the morning, Jen glanced at her watch and realized it was time for her to go home. She confessed regretfully, "Brad, I shouldn't have done this, but you've been my fantasy ever since you became my boss." Brad nodded in agreement and confessed, "I've wanted you too since the day I started working. I hesitated to approach you because I was afraid that you would feel my desire. Jen, can we do this again?" "Yes, Brad. When the opportunity presents itself, we can meet. But please understand that I don't have romantic feelings for you. I just want a physical relationship. My family is my priority, and I don't want to jeopardize that connection. Despite this, I am ready to do with you what I would never do with my husband." They got up and went to the shower, wiping all traces of intimacy from their bodies. After getting dressed hastily, Brad drove her to her car at the office. In the car, they kissed passionately for several minutes before Jen pulled away. "That's enough for today. I need to get home before Pete suspects anything." When Jen arrived home, she found Pete sleeping peacefully. She looked at her husband lying in bed and thought, "I really love you. It's just a temporary affair. I'm sure I'm going to get tired of Brad soon. You will never know about it, and we will continue to live as devoted partners for the rest of our lives." From that night, and for the next 6 weeks, Brad and Jen met at different motels at Brad's discretion. In the living room, Brad and Jen found themselves engrossed in their bestial desires. Brad admitted that he urgently needed an intimate release because, after the divorce, he had not had intimacy for more than a year. Jen also craved a more adventurous and unconventional intimate life to bring animation back to her world. She even started hinting at Pete, encouraging him to explore uncharted territories, but Pete was suspicious of her suggestions, doubting the origin of her knowledge. "How did you know about this, dear?" Guilt suddenly overwhelmed Jen, causing her to fall to her knees and meet Pete's gaze. "Oh my God, I've been reading too many explicit novels lately. I'm sorry if I suggested something that you don't like." Pete shook his head, assuring her that wasn't the point. "It's not that. It's just that you've become so assertive lately. It feels like you already have experience with what you're asking me to do. You're acting more like an instructor than a sweetheart." Panic gripped Jen, and she desperately begged for forgiveness. "I'm really sorry, dear. I just thought we could explore new knowledge together. I promise to stop reading those books that make me think like that." Pete just smiled and hugged her. "You can read whatever you want. Could you give me some time so I can get used to experimenting with this new material?" The next day, Jen went to work and entered Brad's office. She closed the door behind her and told Brad to take a break from the lessons at least for a while. Jen's husband began to be suspicious of her new knowledge of various intimate techniques and actions, which made her feel guilty for taking on the role of her husband's sex teacher. "Jen, it would be better if you tell Pete about our intimate meetings," Brad suggested. "Not as lovers, but as friends with benefits, as they say now. This will remove the guilt you feel and allow our relationship to be open and honest. Pete just needs to understand that for you and me, this is just physical satisfaction without any emotional attachment." Brad's suggestion would also clarify how Jen gained knowledge and experience in these new sexual encounters. As Brad continued to massage Jen, she couldn't help but moan. "Are you saying that your sex life at home hasn't gotten much better since we started making out with each other?" asked Brad. Jen had to admit that her intimate life with Pete now bordered on fantasy. She leaned closer and kissed Brad passionately. The desire was overwhelming, and she didn't want this moment to end. He was able to inflame her feelings like no one else. As the days passed, the thought of revealing her connection to Brad to Pete haunted her. It was becoming increasingly difficult to hide their meetings. Just the thought of Pete finding out the truth through a careless mistake or a careless word terrified her. During their intimate moments in Brad's apartment, Jen discussed this issue with him twice. "The time has come," she concluded. "Pete deserves to know about us. But the thought of him being devastated by accidental exposure haunts me. I think I can help him understand that our relationship is just a temporary phenomenon, and as soon as it ends, everything will return to normal. Only our intimate life will improve significantly." Brad nodded in agreement. "Yes, I think you should talk to him about it. I don't want to be the cause of a breakup or negative consequences. I genuinely care about Pete, and I know that he loves you deeply. Knowing about our meetings will deeply hurt him, perhaps lead to unwise actions. You need to find a way to break the news in a way that minimizes the pain and gives him the opportunity to see the big picture. I'll talk to him tonight. I'm sure he'll understand." Pete got home from work before Jen and had just finished taking a shower. Tonight, he planned to invite Jen and their daughter to dinner, something he treasured, his precious family time. His world revolved around these two amazing women. But when he opened the glass door of the shower, he noticed a small drop of water inside, stuck between two panes. It caught his attention at eye level, and it was impossible not to notice. Pete thought about it. Water should not get inside in this way. We have two options: either disassemble and fix the door, or just replace it. He made a mental note and continued to get dressed. Just as he was pulling on his trousers, Jen came into the room. "Hi, honey," she greeted him. "Hello to you too. You better start getting ready for dinner." "You're a little late," Pete replied. On the way home, Jen stopped by Brad's. As a result, traces of their meeting flowed down her thighs. This was the first time she had brought any traces of Brad's presence with her. But before she told Pete tonight, she needed to gather her strength and convince herself that this was the right thing to do. Brad let her down, and they discussed how Jen would break the news to Pete. Jen turned on the shower and closed the door, taking advantage of the moment to raise the issue of the door itself and a drop of water. Pete took the opportunity to mention this problem and offered to either repair or replace the door. As Jen slowly undressed, Pete caught his breath when he saw her panties and bra. Confused, he asked Jen about the fact that there was something like a stain on her thigh. Pete asked nervously, "Is that what I think it is? Please explain, Jen." Jen began to explain. "Yes, it is, but let me explain. It's not what you're suggesting. You see, Brad and I," interrupting her, Pete exclaimed, "What do you mean it's not what it seems? It's another man's seed. Is this your boss's seed? Are you cheating on me?" Stunned, Pete grabbed his head with both hands and sank down on the edge of the bed. Jen walked over to him and sat down next to him, hugging him tenderly. "Pete, yes, I have an intimate relationship with Brad," she confessed, trying to comfort him. "Actually, the intimate connection is just amazing, but he doesn't matter to me at all. I only love you. The intimate relationship with Brad is purely physical since we are just friends with privileges. It has no emotional connection and will not affect our relationship." Jen reassured Pete, feeling pleased with the way she emphasized the insignificance of the affair. Pete stood up abruptly, recoiling. "Don't you dare touch me. How could you betray me by having an affair and even come after someone else's man without washing?" Get out of my sight immediately. Just go away. Jen protested. No, Pete, this is my house too. I want to be honest with you about my affair, which I believe will end in a few months. I wanted to tell you about it myself to avoid unnecessary pain. By touching on this topic, we will be able to put it in the right perspective and understand that it has no meaning for our relationship. Pete stared at her, puzzled. Doesn't matter? What kind of connection are you talking about? I hate to see that you're attracted to someone else and don't admit it. When did you lose your sense of morality? When did you disregard marriage vows? Pete took his overnight bag out of the closet and began to pack his belongings, including shaving supplies, underwear, and a fresh work shirt. Well, my dear, if you refuse to leave, then I will do it. I can't live with someone else's woman, and that's exactly what you've become. You're not the woman I married, and I won't know who you are anymore. I'll let you know where I'll be in a day or so, but in the meantime, please stay out of my way. Jen tried to stop Pete, begging him to figure out the situation. Dear, we can find a solution. Let's talk about it. Pete pushed her hard, causing her to hit the wall and suffer a painful shoulder injury. The physical pain he caused her made her realize that this was no longer the Pete she once loved. Driven by a surge of emotion, she hit him in the face with an open palm. In response, Pete was stunned and stared at her in disbelief. Did you hit me? He exclaimed incredulously. After you confessed that you cheated on me? Who are you really? It's me, your wife, she replied, her voice full of remorse. I was just shocked by your reaction. In all the time we've been married, you've never raised a hand against me. I just reacted at that moment. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. Pete kept his tone calm as he asked her a question. Are you apologizing for slapping me or for cheating on me? Her response was quick and decisive. My affair with Brad is not cheating. There is no love here, only passion, and you benefit from it. Hasn't our sex life improved since I started dating Brad? Is there something missing for you as my husband? Haven't I fulfilled my role as the wife you married? What have you really lost from my meetings with Brad? Pete's expression hardened as he answered, his voice filled with pain. What have I lost? I've lost the ability to trust you. I have lost my confidant, lover, and best friend. I've lost more than you can imagine. Don't you understand the magnitude of my loss? She shook her head, a look of incomprehension on her face. No, I don't understand. Jen suddenly found hope. Look, I have a better way to explain this. Do you remember that water bubble on the shower door that you were talking about? So what I have done, and will continue to do until everything is resolved, is no more than that drop of water on the door. Let me clarify. Does this affect the functionality of the door or its overall integrity? Absolutely not. When the water bubble evaporates, there will be no trace of it. The glass will remain flawless, and the bathroom floor will be dry. That's exactly the impact of my collaboration with Brad. It's just a minor problem, like a water bubble on the door. As soon as it disappears, everything will return to normal. Pete thought for a moment. Jen, I love you, and I will always love you. But I can't just forget that your affair is ruining our relationship. At the moment, I'm going to leave. You have to decide for yourself what's best for you. Just remember what I said about the shower door. Because of the water bubbles, you will either have to repair the door or change it. The same principle applies to our marriage. So make your choice. With that, Pete left the house. Jen didn't know that this would be their last moment together in the house. Jen turned to Brad and told him about recent events. Brad offered Jen to find solace at his house, but she refused, saying that she needed to be alone. Jen believed that Pete had overreacted and would eventually come to his senses. Their marriage was strong, and she believed that it would withstand this minor offense on her part. When Jen drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of passionate encounters with Brad. He was very sympathetic to Jen's domestic crisis, but deep down, Brad wanted to keep in touch with Jen because she satisfied his intimate desires. He recognized her skill in this regard. Brad dismissed Pete's concern as insignificant. Now that Jen was in his power, Brad felt entitled to use her for his satisfaction until he got tired of her. Brad was used to luxury cruises, and recently he came across a brochure about an unusual 2-week trip to the Eastern Caribbean. Given the cold winter weather, the prospect of spending 2 weeks in the Caribbean seemed incredibly attractive. Jen still didn't spend the whole night with Brad. She would visit him for a few hours and then return home, hoping that Pete would get in touch to discuss their problems. But Pete made it clear that he would not return as long as Jen continued her affair with Brad. Brad tried to stay the night at Jen's house, which forced her to send her daughter to stay with a friend. As they settled into Pete's bed, the phone rang, and Pete was on the other end of the line. Furious to discover Brad's presence at their home, Pete hung up immediately. Jen was also furious when she realized she was about to have an intimate relationship with Brad in Pete's bed, violating Pete's exclusive rights. She asked Brad to leave, promising to meet him at the office the next day. At work, Brad enthusiastically announced that he had booked a 2-week Caribbean cruise for the two of them. Assuming they would be free to enjoy each other's company without worrying about Pete's opinion, he believed that if Jen joined him on the cruise, Pete would be overcome with jealousy and desperately try to win her back upon their return. Jen came to realize that her relationship with Brad was costing her too much, both financially and emotionally. Her desires were hurting the person she loved most in the world. She believed that spending time with Brad would help her get rid of these feelings. Jen agreed with herself and decided to inform Pete of her plans by leaving a message at his hotel. She affectionately addressed him as Sweet Pete and explained that she was going on a 2-week cruise with Brad. Jen hoped that spending time together would help her get rid of passionate thoughts about Brad. She assured Pete that when she returned, she would be completely devoted to him forever. Jen also mentioned that since she would be gone for 2 weeks, Pete could stay at their house and take care of their daughter. She casually mentioned the ongoing problem with water leakage in the shower door, noting that it had increased slightly, but still did not cause significant harm. Jen asked Pete to sort it out while he was there, reminding him of the water bubble in the door which she had already mentioned. Finally, Jen went on the 2-week cruise with Brad, but 10 days later, she realized that her fantasies about Brad had turned into harsh reality. Apart from the physical aspect of their relationship, they had very little in common. Throughout the cruise, he treated her like an object, ignoring her feelings and desires. Every morning he expected immediate intimacy, ignoring her need to freshen up. His morning breath was disgusting, which completely turned her away from him. It was impossible to sleep because of his incessant snoring. She couldn't help but see these flaws in her once perfect lover. On the 7th night at sea, after a heated argument about ending their affair, Brad drunkenly punched her in the face. Although he later apologized, it was too late and not enough. 2 weeks later, Jen's fascination with this fantasy faded. Pete, Brad, and the shower door had lost their appeal. On the 14th day, they reached the port and flew home. Jen said goodbye to Brad, hugging him when he dropped her off at the front door that late evening. She plucked up the courage and said, "Brad, it's over. I'm tired of you." On this trip, fantasies and desires disappeared. All I need now is Pete. Thank you for the pleasant moments, but it's time to move on. Brad stared at her and arrogantly replied, "It's over when I say it's over." Jen stood her ground, determined to figure out the situation. "I'm going to open this door right now and call Pete," she said. "I need to apologize for my behavior and fix everything. And if you're still here when I'm done, I hope he'll help you come to your senses. He's much better than you. He's a real man." Brad replied with contempt, "You're just a stupid woman who likes cheap thrills. Eventually, Pete will realize that. When he's gone, you'll come crawling back. If you can convince me, I might consider being with you again." Heading for his car, Brad added, "Save yourself the trouble of coming to the office tomorrow. Your things will be packed and sent to you along with compensation upon termination." Jen quickly unlocked the door and hurried into the house. Just as she was about to grab the phone, a letter lying on the kitchen table caught her attention. Carefully taking the letter out of the envelope, she began to read and found that it was addressed to her and written in Pete's sloppy handwriting. "I want to touch on the issue of a water bubble in the shower door that you mentioned. First, I should point out that your belief that the bubble would not cause visible harm was mistaken, but you were right to make the connection between the water bubble and your acts of infidelity with Brad. If you had been present, you would have seen that each appearance of a water bubble left a small mark on the glass. Over time, this sediment accumulated and began to cloud the glass, reducing its transparency. Unfortunately, you weren't here to watch this. If you were here, you would have noticed that moisture eventually led to the formation of mold and mildew between the glasses. Now a significant black spot has formed on the glass, which not only spoils the appearance, but also poses a danger to health. As well as the state of our marriage, your actions have clouded our relationship and led to unhealthy circumstances. As with the shower door, we have two options. Option 1 is to repair the door by disassembling and restoring it, or option 2 is to completely replace the door. When we were evaluating the options for our marriage, one of them seemed viable until you decided to go on a 2-week cruise with your lover. From that moment on, I could not imagine any way to restore our relationship, so I chose the second option. I will replace the shower door, replace you, and eventually replace our marriage. If you hadn't gone on that ill-fated cruise, you would have seen both our daughter and me looking forward to saving our marriage. But your infidelity during the cruise, which led to the appearance of mold and mildew, left us no choice but to start all over again. Your actions not only pose a threat to our well-being, but also poison the love I once felt for you. You completely extinguished my feelings. Stephanie and I made the decision to leave on the 3rd day of your cruise, and now we live in a place that will be difficult for you to find. As soon as your cruise comes to an end, my lawyer will hand you the divorce papers stating adultery as the basis. The testimony of the steward on the ship, as well as the people living in Brad's apartment building who can confirm your indiscretion, has been collected. In addition, the receptionists at various hotels where you often visited were interviewed. I have evidence and testimonies confirming your infidelity, including an audio recording of our phone conversation in which you unsuccessfully tried to justify your actions by simply making love. I reported Brad to his boss for abusing his official position to enter into an intimate relationship with you, and upon returning to the office, he faces dismissal. His company is offering me a settlement agreement to resolve the situation. I firmly believe that Brad will try to manipulate you into continuing the affair, and if you refuse, he may eventually fire you. But if he gets fired, he will no longer be able to control you either at work or in his personal life. It is possible that your colleagues will find out about the situation, so it is important for you to be persistent because work will be your only source of income. You were right to compare your actions and their consequences to a water bubble. If I were you, I'd be thinking about our marriage looking at the shower door, hoping to find the person I originally married. If you can afford it, you can take the house since I have already transferred my ownership rights to you. Now, without any guilt, you can invite your friends with privileges to what used to be our home. I took away half of the furniture so Stephanie and I could set up a new home. Once we're settled in, you can talk to Stephanie, but I have to insist that she never comes into the house when there are other men around. Your behavior is not a good example for her. Jen dropped the letter and knelt on the floor. She realized that her irresistible attraction to Brad had clouded her mind. Because of her rash actions, she lost a once wonderful marriage and her best friend. Now all she had left was an empty house with a shower door covered in black spots of mold and mildew. She knew she would never fix the shower door, as it served as a constant reminder of her mistakes. It's been a month since their divorce. Jen was never able to continue working in the office. All her colleagues looked at her askance and whispered behind her back. When Brad was fired, their intimate relationship became known to everyone. Now Jen is completely immersed in self-pity. Her mental state is absolutely unstable. Constant use of antidepressants has not yet given her any improvement. Jen sold her house and lives with her parents, blaming herself for destroying her family.